Is it still muted? No, I just unmuted him.
If it
This is a program for all of us. So social interaction helps all of us. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. For anyone that knows me, knows that my background is rooted in faith. By that, I mean I was raised in the church and I believe on starting things with the word. So in this particular case, I like the quote, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom, and in all of thy getting, get an understanding. We are here today to help to get a better understanding of our elections process. The title of today's program is This Is Your Democracy. Yes, the United States of America is a democracy and a democratic country. We are a representative democracy based off of the principle of free and fair elections, equal representation and protection of individual rights and freedoms. And I would argue that one of the greatest of those freedoms is the right to the ballot box. So the US Constitution establishes the framework by which our government exists. So we will be going over some of the basic principles of how the electoral process works here in the state of Georgia. But before we go into that part of our program, we do have an individual who will be speaking. Representative Kimberly Alexander. Representative Kimberly Alexander was elected to the Georgia General Assembly in 2012. Representative Alexander serves at the District 66, which encompasses Douglas County and the southeast section of Paulding County. District 66 was a newly drawn district when Representative Alexander begun, and she was the first African-American female elected to serve in this district in Paulding County, and the first African-American female that lives in Douglas County to be elected and serve in Douglas County. Representative Alexander resides in Douglas County, but grew up in Paulding County and attended Paulding County High School. She is a single mother of a son who graduated from Hiram High School. Representative Alexander earned a bachelor's degree in sociology from Morris Brown College with a minor in education. During her educational pursuits, Representative Alexander worked full-time on campus while attending classes and raising her son. She earned a master's degree from Central Michigan University in general administration. Representative Alexander has graciously agreed to come today to speak and give a legislative update. Please put your hands together for the representative for the 66th District, Representative Kimberly Alexander.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You guys can hear me? Okay, so I did not know exactly what I was gonna do, but I kind of wanted to go over like the application process and then go up into talking about some of the things that may have changed. And the reason why is because it is so important when you get ready to do your application, even though it's not now and it just happened in November. It is very important that you guys know this because I sat on the Election Integrity Committee where the Senate Bill 202 came out of. So it may seem like it's redundant, but it is very, very important because some of the things that were put in the Senate Bill 202 are some of the things that they're trying to change. So for the senior citizens, it is very, very, very important. And I say this because I have a mom that should be 97 in April. Yeah, and so every year I have to help her when it comes to that because I have to either call the election office and have them to mail her the application, and I have to help her with that. So it is very, very important that what I'm going to tell you as it relates to the application, you have to keep that in mind. Because although you just did this back in November, you're going to have to do this every election cycle. So if you request an application, you got to request it every year. They're not going to automatically send that out to you. I want to be very clear with that. You will be sitting there and you will be waiting for that application. You will not receive it. You have to request it every year. So Very important. Douglas County have that one drop box and it's inside. Now this year, they're trying to get rid of the drop boxes altogether. Period. No drop boxes. So I don't know where that legislation is, and I'm really, really hoping that there will not be any legislation coming out as it relates to elections. I have a bill, HB 110. What that bill is a bill that will allow us to have a study committee after each election cycle. So after the election cycle in 2024, it would allow us to study, see exactly what those issues and concerns are for Senate Bill 202, because we really don't know right now. We're only into a year. I'm sure that the poll workers and the election supervisors, there are lots of issues that probably occurred based on Senate Bill 202. We don't know what those ramifications are. So all that bill will do is just have us to study and then come back. Instead of every year we come back with all these different bills, it will allow us to just come back with one big bill. It seems simple, but I've only had one hearing for that bill. It's very important as it relates to the absentee ballot application. They changed it. It used to be like it was over 100 days. It is now only 78 days prior to the election that you're going to have to ask for that application. So you got to keep in mind when you ask for the application, you got to make sure you have enough time to receive the application based on the mail. Absentee applications must be received at least 11 days prior to the election day. Any application received after that deadline, once it happens, is going to be rejected. So you're going to have to be very vigilant and mindful that you request your application when it's time for elections. You can also, to vote by ballot, you can submit an absentee ballot application. You can request an absentee ballot application online, email, mail, or fax. Or you can even call the Douglas County office and just ask them to send you out one. You must submit your application deadline ballot by the deadline, the application by the deadline. It's important to also, once you request it, to return it early. You do need to request a specific type. You do not need to request a specific type of ballot for a general election. If you're voting in a primary election, you would need to request either a Democrat, Republican, or nonpartisan ballot. It is very important. I'm hoping you guys are taking notes. For that number 7 on your application, you have to read it very, very careful and make sure that you are including a copy of your ID card. So even though you did that this last time for November, what I request is that you guys still make a copy of that card and put that in there. Even though you may think, well, okay, I did that last year, you still have to do it again. If you do not have a driver's license or state ID, or if it don't fit in the area of the application, you can also attach a copy of that and submit it with the application. As it relates to that number 12 on the application, you want to check that first box, and I'm hoping that the application is still the same because this is what I did for this election cycle. One, opt-in to receive an absentee ballot for the rest of the election cycle. So you will read that on your application. It's going to say, do you want to opt in? You have to make sure you hit that, because if you don't hit that, and we're just saying for the whole election cycle, then they will not send, for instance, if there's a runoff, you will not get another application. So that's the reason why you have to hit that opt-in. As it relates to the signature is required on ballot envelope, where you had to seal it up this time and then you had to sign the envelope on the outside. And the date of birth are required for everyone. A driver's license and a ID number is required if a voter has either. If the voter doesn't have either a driver license or ID, the last 4 digits of your social security number. So did you guys do that the last time? So you got to do it again this time. Put your last 4 digits on there. I think that's it that was important for the applications. I did see a bill that some people are thinking it may possibly come up. I don't know right now. I tried to get more information. There's some that are saying that we will not, this bill may not come up, but if it does, that is the bill that I was telling you about. I know that what it's gonna do is it's gonna appoint an executive director who will be a full-time employee of the board. It has a lot of information and a lot of details in there, and I won't try to give you all of that because right now, if that bill is not coming up, I don't want people to be worried about it. I can always come back here and do another town hall and update you guys on what's going on with it. Let's all pray that there will not be any more changes to come before the next election cycle and that we're good. But that Senate bill is 222, just to keep that in mind. But right now, I think we're good. We only have about 3 days left. So we were out of session today. I go back tomorrow. We come back on Monday. And then we're not there on Tuesday, but we have all these different committees. So maybe some things that come in our committee. And then on Wednesday is that day 40. So that's when we're gonna be there to midnight. And so whatever bills is gonna come up will come up. This bill may come up at midnight. It can come up after midnight. But I would definitely keep you posted and let you know. Any questions for me? I hope I've given you some information and just something to keep in mind as it relates to you requesting that application again when it's time for us to vote. I want to encourage you guys to please, please, please volunteer. I know that they're going to need poll watchers, poll workers. Just make sure you guys are still volunteering to help out at the election office. They need all the help that they can get.
You're mostly probably talking about the last major election. During the gubernatorial election, there were 55,000 votes cast for the general election. Of that 55,000, I believe, Malcolm, you correct me, 3,000 were absentee. The percentage, and I will say this one too, though, to Representative Alexander, this is why we're having this type of program. You good. This is why this is why we're having this type of program. We've recently had a lot of changes to our elections process. And because of those changes and misinformation and disinformation about our electoral process, different pieces of the electoral process have fallen by the wayside, or people are shifting how they vote. We're going to touch on some of this a little later, and there will be a Q&A session. I promise to roll this back in. But go on with the program. This is your democracy. Oh, I'll pull him in. You had a question for Representative Alexander?
Yeah. But can I say to her, but that process by voting by mail is very easy, and a lot of people are taking advantage of it. And I know during the pandemic, when people did not want to come out, people were voting by mail in large numbers all over.
The 2020 election, each election, the general election, general primary and the general election, we processed almost 20,000 absentee ballots, both elections.
Very safe.
So there are pieces, and I'm gonna address that one in a little later too.
Okay.
Yes, explain the process of which, in a bill that doesn't make crossover, maybe it died, but can be amended to a bill that is.
It's called the Christmas tree bill.
Yeah.
There's several of those already going on right now. We have a bill that was it was a box car, like a little sporting box car, those box cars that people have races. A sports betting bill has got added onto there. So what you would see that if there are some bills that did not cross over, they get added on. So you look at it and they'll say, okay, this is the boxcar bill, but it actually got some other languages attached to it.
That's how it feels up.
That's how some bills don't die. We talk about the crossover that some may have crossed over to each, but it may not have come up to that committee, but now it's been added on to something else. Also, if it, right, but what I've seen is that typically at that midnight, if we're still voting, is more than likely something bad that's coming up. If it's like 12:10, those bills typically you end up in the AJC because you don't really have time to read them. That day, it is a lot of stuff coming to you on your desk. And so it's so much verbiage and so much language and so many bills that are coming. You don't have time to really read the whole entire bill to get the logistics of it. So, you know, it's supposed to be midnight, but sometimes it goes to 12:10. I just gave you the scenario that if you're still voting at that 12 midnight, there is more than something likely that's going to come up that it's not going to be just so clear and etched in stone that is Senate Bill 222. It's probably got 4 different things attached to it, 4 different bills attached to it.
Yeah.
Is it for me or? Okay.
Okay, for senior citizens, it used to be they didn't have to apply for the mail-in ballot, but, you know, you check it off. But now, seniors have to apply everything too, is that correct?
So this all is in Senate Bill 202. Remember, Senate Bill 202 was 52, it was 52 sections, almost 80 to 90 something pages. It came out of my committee. It kept changing, kept changing. They changed the entire way and structure of how we vote in Georgia. Which is why it was the irony of it is because the voting was going fine, but then all of a sudden they wanted all these changes. That bill was extremely thick. It's a lot of things that changed in Senate Bill 202. And despite all the changes, we still had record number of people that came out and voted. However, one of the changes in there is that if you request an absentee ballot application, it's requiring you, whereas before you could get that, if you requested it as a senior citizen, they would send it out to you every year. That is not the case now. So if senior citizens, that whoever was requested absentee ballot, if you do not request it again when it's time for you to vote this cycle, you will not receive one. You will be waiting and waiting and it will never come. You're gonna have to request it every election cycle. And that's because of Senate Bill 202.
Let me add some caveat to that one. The parts of that bill, and we're going to get back on track too. But to answer that question, when you request an absentee ballot, there are 2 protective classes in the state of Georgia. There's elderly and disabled. You have to meet one of those 2 protective classes to go onto a rollover list. There is no permanent rollover list. By that, I mean, it does not transfer from year to year. What happens is it transfers from election year to election year. An election year can be encompassed within a single year, or a runoff election can get pushed into a following year, but that's still one election year. When you request an absentee ballot, there is a line section, and we'll end up going over the absentee application in a second, but there is a line on the absentee application that has one of 2 boxes. You have to meet one of those 2 criteria. For elderly and disabled, I believe it's 65 and older. Yeah, 65 and older to be classified as elderly, or you can be classified as disabled. One of those 2 protective classes will get you a ballot for that entire election year if you check those boxes and say that you opt to receive the ballot for that election year. But you have to check both of those boxes on the absentee ballot application. Let's bring this back around. This is your democracy. The United States of America is a republic form of government. It is both a republic and a democracy. A republic is a form of government in which people elect representatives to make decisions on their behalf, part of that governing process. We have representative here. The United States is a federal republic, which means that our power is divided between the federal government and the states. The Constitution sets out the structure of the government and the powers and responsibilities of each of the various branches and levels of government. A democracy. A democracy is a form of government in which the people have a say in the decisions that affect their lives. In the United States, U.S. citizens have the right to vote and have the right to participate in the democratic process, including the election of the representatives that are making the laws. We just had a representative that is helping shape our state here speak with us now. The U.S. is a republic also, meaning that it is a form of government where the people elect representatives to make decisions on their behalf and where the citizens have a say in the decision-making process. One of my favorite quotes of one of my favorite passages is the first line, and you all should know this one. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. Nobody? Okay. The opening lines of the preamble are one of my favorite passages, because for our government to work, it has to have we the people. This is our form of government. So for this program to start, let's get a basic understanding so that we all are starting from the same fact pattern. Douglas County. Douglas County is number 18. The state of Georgia consists of 159 counties. Of those 159 counties, only 40 of the 159 have a population size of 55,000 or more. These, what you see on the screen, and we'll put our slide deck on our website at celebratedouglascounty.com. It'll be a subsection that says town hall if you want the slide deck after this. Douglas County, as far as population size, is number 18 of 159 counties. This is the sequential order that is on the screen right now. Next slide, please. Douglas County has a voting population size of 109,500 registered voters at this time. That number includes active and inactive numbers. Active are individuals that have participated in the last 2 election cycles. Inactive are individuals that may not have participated in the last election cycle. The reason why you include both of those numbers is that anyone that is a voter on the Douglas County or any county's rolls can actually vote in any election. When you vote in that election, then if you were in an inactive status, if you look on My Voter page and you see inactive next to your name, that just means that you had not participated in the last election. As soon as you vote, whether that's in person, by mail, or have contact with our office, that's signing a petition, that's any number of contact with our office, we update what is called the contact date. That update of the contact date turns you to an active voter. So that active status is not just tied to you participating on election day or advance voting, it's tied to you participating in the process. Douglas County has 25 election day polling locations. Douglas County has 7 advanced voting locations and 2 municipalities that are encompassed either partially or completely in Douglas County. Douglas County houses the city of Douglasville as its largest municipality. We also have parts of the city of Villa-Rica. During the last redistricting session, we're getting more of the city of Villa-Rica. We also have, it's not a municipality. At one point in time, the areas of Lithia Springs and Austell were in their own municipality, but they are encompassed within the county. So we have unincorporated parts of the county that stretch outside of the traditional city boundaries as well, such as the city of Austell, we have a couple of streets that are in Douglas County, but are located within the city of Austell. We don't officiate the elections for the city of Austell because that's only a couple of streets. We have a partnership between Douglas County and Cobb County with the intergovernmental agreement that those streets are basically administered by Cobb County. For municipalities such as Villa Rica. Villa Rica is a city that is encompassed in 2 different counties. When a municipality is encompassed in 2 different counties, that municipality can choose which one of the 2 counties it actually wants to officiate its elections. The city of Villa Rica chooses to contract with both Douglas County and Austell. We work as a partnership when conducting the elections for the city of Villa Rica. Next slide, please. Give me the next one. I'll come back to that one. This is the voter registration application. The voter registration application is how you come onto the voting rolls. The voting rolls are the number of people that are within a county that are voting either in federal, state, or local elections. We house the voting rolls for federal, state, and county elections. Recently, the state of Georgia has updated its system by which we maintain those records. You may have seen recently in the news for a program called Jarvis. Jarvis is basically the elections database that houses our voting rolls. This is the elections application. In order to get on the voting rolls, you had to have completed an voter registration application. That's one of the ways to register to vote. On the application, when you register to vote, there are one of 2 things that are required for you to provide. The information that is present on the screen is also on the is also on the voter registration application itself. So if I seem like I'm going a little fast, I'll go over this probably again during the question and answer session, and it'll also be available for anybody that wants to pick up an absentee ballot application. There are one of 2 things that are required when you register to vote. You either have to have a Georgia driver's license or you have to have a Social Security card. The reason why you have to have one of those 2 things, the United States requires you to be a U.S. citizen to register to vote. Part of the registration process, when you submit a voter registration application, that application is verified by one of 2 offices, either Driver Services or the Social Security Administration. When you go get your driver's license, for anyone that has gotten a driver's license, you had to provide them with I-9 paperwork. I-9 is just the information that you provide proof of citizenship. That I-9 paperwork typically included a birth certificate or naturalization paperwork showing that you were a U.S. citizen. You had to provide that to Driver Services. So because you had to provide that to Driver Services, in an effort to make this a more seamless process, our office actually gets those records from Driver Services and can update your voter registration that way as well. I'd say that there are a couple different ways to register to vote. When you register to vote, you either filled out a paper application for those that like pen and paper. You went through Driver Services. When you go get your driver's license, the state of Georgia has an opt-out system. You have to tell them that you do not wish to register to vote. Otherwise, they will send us a digital copy of your information to update your voter registration. That's either to register you to vote or if you have changed locations. There's also now a third way to register to vote. You can register to vote using an online application. If you see the placards over here with the QR code, I know that people think QR codes are scary, but they're not. A QR code is just reading whatever information you have attached to it. If you actually hold your phone up and scan one of the QR codes on the posters, they will open My Voter page. My Voter page is a way in which you can submit an online voter registration application to our office. This application is the same application that you will use if you're registering to vote or if you've had any changes to your account. If you move, we do not know that you have moved unless you notify our office. Changing your address with the postal carrier does not automatically update your voter registration. Later on, we'll talk about list maintenance activities, and I'll tell you how our office interacts with the postal service. But that being said, if you have moved, if you have changed addresses, for those of you with children and grandchildren that are in college or different things that want to either move your registration to the address where you are going to school, or if you want to make sure that your information is up to date at your current address in the county, these are some of the ways in which you can do it. The application is the same if you're registering to vote or if you're updating your information. There are some qualifying information that is required when you register to vote. You're providing we try to highlight these when we mail out applications to individuals, but demographic information, last name, first name. If you have a middle name or a maiden name, you can provide that. A residential address is required. A residential address is required. Say it with me, ladies and gentlemen. I believe in audience participation. Your participation gets me off the stage. Getting me off the stage gets you to go home. A residential address is required. A residential address is not a P.O. box. You do not live in a P.O. box. You can't have neighbors come to your P.O. box and sit in your living room. The reason why a residential address is required, we use that residential address to what is called District U. You have a grouping of representatives that are based off of your home address. Give me one of the slides that got a complete map. Okay, you can go back one. This is a map of the entire state of Georgia. This is a good one too, because this is one of the parts of your combo number. Your combo number represents your unique set of groupings for all of your representatives based off of your address. You have a congressional district. Your congressional district is your federal district. The same offices that correspond with federal also translate to state, also translate to county, also translate to municipal. Municipal or municipality is just a fancy way of saying city. Under the federal government, you have the congressional offices. The congressional offices are Congress. Congress is charged with regulating your money. Congress consists of the House of Representatives and your Senate seat. The state and every other state has 2 Senate seats. Your congressional seat is based off of the population of the state. Every 10 years, the entire United States has a mandate that is constitutionally dictated that we will count every person in the United States. It does not say citizen. They were intentional with that. We'll go into some of the reasons why I didn't say citizen before. The United States has a past. But every 10 years, they're required to count every person in the United States. And that counting of every person in the United States, that dictates how we have congressional representation. Right now, the state of Georgia has 14 congressional districts. The 14 congressional districts are outlined. For the most part, most every county in the state, except for where you see the arrows, are in a complete congressional district. Up until the 2020 census, Douglas County was completely in the 13th congressional district. Douglas County now splits between the eastern half of the county and the western half of the county in two different districts. Most of the congressional district is housed in the 13th congressional district, but now we have the 3rd congressional district that moved up and over into Douglas County. The way that districts are supposed to be drawn, you take your total population and subdivide your total population by the number of districts that you're trying to create. That's on a federal level. That's also the same way for the state and local offices as well. With this one, like I say, you have the Congress. The Congress consists of the House of Representatives and the Senate. If we drill down a little bit and get to the state level, we have a state house and a state rep. Those are just like the federal level, we have that on the state. If you drill down even further on the county level, those representatives will be your district commissioners. We also have one of our district commissioners in the back of here. I don't know if she want to speak, but I'm going to wave her out too. If you drill down even further on a municipal level, that's your city council. So your Congress represents your districts. Your districts are how what we're using to group you based off of your address. Give me the next one. Go back. Next. Next. You can leave it there. I keep talking. Okay. Combo numbers. Let me get that one. We have a combo slide, don't we? Yeah. Okay. This is this is what I'm saying with you all. Combo numbers. Combo numbers are not just your federal, not just your state, federal, state, county, and city. All of those come together. We have a long ballot. Anybody that has voted in the state of Georgia, you're wondering why that order is. That order of federal, state, county, and city is also represented by the placement of those questions on the physical ballot themselves. You start with your highest level of government and you drill down. The state of Georgia has a rule in place for the grouping of names. Whichever political party holds the governorship, that's the name of the first, that's the name of the political party that's represented first on the ballot under each of these offices. Right now, who is the current governor? What's his name? Give me a name. Brian Kemp is our current governor. Brian Kemp's party is what? Okay, so that's the reason why, because I'm saying this now, I don't mean to be condescending, but these are all questions that I've gotten from people. The purpose of this program is to begin to have a town hall where we can discuss questions that your neighbors and your colleagues have presented so that we all can learn together. The office of the governor is the first race, is the order that you do it. So it's not necessarily in even alphabetical order with the placement of names on a ballot. You place whatever political party the governor is, that's the first person, and then the second highest political party gets the second name, and then you go in sequential order after that. This number, if you see on the top of your ballots, you will see that combo number represented on the top of your ballot. A lot of people don't understand what all of that wording is when they receive a physical ballot. That's whether you receive a physical ballot or you vote on one of these. These are called ballot marking devices. We're going to get to them in a second. But the very first piece, when you log into here, it will tell you what your grouping of representatives is based off of your address. The election system, Jarvis houses how we keep track of each of you as an individual, of what district information and what ballots you should be receiving. Give me the full ballot, Malcolm. the top part of the ballot. It says, and this is an absentee ballot that you would be receiving in the mail, but this information is also present on a physical ballot that you come into one of our 25 election day polling locations to vote, or one of our 7 advanced voting polling locations to vote. Shameless plug, but it's not so shameless. I believe in everyone should have equal and fair access to the ballot box. Go back for me to this slide. You see this number represented right here? 143,520. That's Douglas County's total population. Douglas County, if you remember from the first slide, Douglas County has 7 advanced voting sites. Advanced voting sites are unique because that is what's called a vote center. Anyone out of the county can come to a vote center and vote. Where I say that we are a unique beast is because you see this number right here? Douglas County has 7 advanced voting sites. Number 3 on this list has 762,500. Cobb County. Cobb County is one of our neighbors. Cobb County has 11 advanced voting sites. The advanced voting sites are for your entire population. You do not know who's going to come to an advanced voting site. They are just anyone that is registered in your county can come early vote. I encourage individuals to early vote because the state of Georgia has a 3-week early voting period. Now we also provide 2 Saturdays with that 3-week period as well that you can cast your ballot. But back to my point, Cobb County has 11. Number 2 on this list, Gwinnett County. Gwinnett County has 11 advanced voting sites. You see those population differences between Gwinnett County. Gwinnett County has 948,504 voters. It has 11 advanced voting sites. Number 3 on that list, almost 762,000 people, has 11 advanced voting sites. We should do better. We can do better. For Douglas County, Douglas County's Board of Elections is committed to making sure that our voters have access to the ballot box. Let's go back to the actual ballot itself. The top part of the ballot. We currently have 25 election day precincts. We are looking at more election day precincts. A precinct is typically housed within a 2-mile radius of your home address. That becomes difficult because we don't have a lot of buildings in Douglas County that are accessible for voting needs. Right now, we have a partnership with Douglas County Schools, so we're in some of the schools. We are also graciously in some of the churches around Douglas County, but the elections board does not own a precinct. These precincts allow us to utilize their facilities. They allow us for multiple elections to come into their facilities and vote. The reason why that's important and the reason why I'm telling you this is next year is an important election day. The very first election next year is the presidential preference primary. The presidential preference primary is a primary election in which the citizens of the state of Georgia that represent, at this point, both of the 2 political parties that the state of Georgia recognizes will be selecting their candidates that will be running in the general election. But right now, can anybody tell me the date of the first election next year? No, you cannot. Georgia election code allows the Secretary of State until December 1st of the preceding year to select the date of the very first election. There are a lot of things that go into an election with notifying facilities that we do not own, that are graciously allowing us to be in their facility, with scheduling drivers, with scheduling individuals to transport equipment, with the citizens that are working these elections. there are a lot of moving pieces to the electoral process by which the average citizen have no understanding of. The very first election will be the presidential preference primary. Typically, it's in March. I've heard talk that it may be in February. What that means is, based off of Senate Bill 202, the first election, we don't have a date for it because the Secretary of State has until December 1st to set that date. But that date dictates when you can start to submit absentee ballot applications, because it used to be 180 days. So you could start, it used to be 180 days. Now it's 78 days before an election. How do you calculate 78 days before an election date that you don't have? I say all this to say that an informed public is able to contact their legislatures and their elected officials and voice their opinions on our electoral process. I want people to not just say when things are going bad, but to actually question their elected officials why these pieces of decision making are not made sooner, in order to be able to give the general public a better opportunity to plan for elections. We in this country pay lip service that we value elections and we value our electoral process. I want the state of Georgia to live up to that language. Back to what we were going, combo numbers and precincts. On your ballot, the top part of your ballot should always say the county in which you live. You'll also see precinct information. That precinct is based off of a 2-mile radius of your home address. You will always see your precinct information. You will always see the election date for which you are voting for. If you vote early, that election date will always be representative of that November general election date. There are other types of elections. I am hesitant to say it. The total name for a general primary is the general primary election. I like for people to think of a primary as a selection process. A selection process means that you're helping to narrow down your candidates that will run in the general election. One of the questions that people always seem to have during a general primary, for us, we do have the general primary date. The general primary at this point, unless an election is moved, will happen in May. The general primary is when you will narrow down your candidates for your statewide offices. That's going to be on this next one. You'll have the highest will be the Senate, the federal Senate race will be the highest because the governor just finished. So you have the Senate race, and then it'll go down from there. You'll have your federal Senate, you'll have a state Senate, state House, then you'll get your congressional representation on that May's ballot as well. It'll still be in sequential order with the highest level of office going from there, and any county questions or any municipal questions will appear after the elected officials. Oh, let's go to voting basics. And then I'll do the elections calendar. In the state of Georgia, the state of Georgia recently has been bantering around the idea of making a bill that you have to be a US citizen to vote in Georgia elections. That's utterly ridiculous. Part of our process as voting in this country is already that you have to be a US citizen. So taking time to pass a bill that's already law, yes. You have to be a legal resident of Georgia. You have to be at least 18 years of age to vote. You have to have not been found mentally, not found or adjudicated as mentally incompetent. You have to not be serving any felonies of moral turpitude. The felony piece, a lot of times individuals at points in their lives may have been younger and may have run afoul with the law. Having a slip up in your life does not permanently remove your voting rights. if you have completed all forms of restitution, that restitution includes any monetary fines, that restitution includes any hours of community service, anything that's attached to you completing your sentence, then you cannot register to vote. Once you have completed everything that has been assigned to you, then you can re-register to vote. You get your voting rights back in the state of Georgia. Now, what I'm giving you and what I'm telling you, these are the rules that apply to the state of Georgia. We are a democracy, and part of our democracy and part of being a representative democracy means that each state is allowed to set up their own rules as it pertains to processes within that state. There are 50 different states. There are 50 different state election rules. So for the state of Georgia, this is how the state of Georgia has chosen to deal with individuals that may have committed a felony. Once you've completed all restitution, you can reapply to have your rights to vote reinstated. When you register to vote, you're required to provide one of two things. You're required to either have a Georgia driver's license or the last 4 of your social. Those two things are because they are going to verify your citizenship based off of that. So you do not have to, if you're doing your driver's license, you provide the driver's license number, you do not have to bring in another copy of your driver's license. If you're doing an online registration, we're going to pull that. If you are doing a paper application, you're supposed to include a copy of your driver's license with that application. But you're also required to give us the numerical numbers off of that application. Oh, let me go to elections calendar. My time. Y'all help me keep track of time because I can go. This is a subject matter I'm passionate about. I'm going to go through a couple more facts, and we are going to do a question and answer session because the whole point of this program is not just to hear me talk, but it's for you all to be able to present information or to ask questions about our electoral process, and I do want to get to that. Representative Alexander did mention this fact with the absentee ballot application. The absentee ballot application did change. Senate Bill 202 now requires a couple different things with the absentee ballot application. You are now required to, if you have a Georgia's license, Georgia driver's license or ID, you can provide the numerical information off of that Georgia driver's license or ID with your absentee ballot application. If you do not have a Georgia driver's license or ID, you can still request an absentee ballot. You just have to provide supporting documentation, but that supporting documentation has to be a physical copy. By that, I mean, if you have a passport, you can provide a copy of your passport. You can provide a copy of a government issued ID, but you have to physically provide a copy with that application. If you do not physically provide that copy with that application, you'll be issued from my office what is called a cure affidavit. A cure affidavit will come on our letterhead. It'll tell you what your deficiencies were and what do you need to provide to our office to cure your application. Cure just means to finalize the process. The 5th Monday before an election, and the reason why it's like that, for those that don't know what this orange book is, this is our election Bible, also known as Georgia Annotated Election Code. Georgia Annotated Election Code was written by a whole team of lawyers. If you don't believe me, I'll get you a copy that you can peruse. It is also available online. If you do a Google search for Georgia Annotated Election Code, you can see all of the code sections that are applicable to everything that we're discussing today in here as well. But this code section was written by a team of lawyers. That's why you get things like the 5th Monday before. What is the 5th Monday? It's written like that to be able to go from year to year. We have this term election year. Every year is an election year. There are some type of elections every year. I like to use, a better term I like to use is major election years. By major election years, I mean that they're federal races or complete county races. But outside of major election years, which are for us are presidential election years and our gubernatorial election years, aside from those, you have years like this where you have municipal elections. Every election is important. Municipal elections are important because you can walk into the mayor's office and speak with the mayor. You can't walk into 1600 Pennsylvania. You can try, good luck with that. But you can walk into your mayor's office, you can go see your city council member. There is a saying that all politics is local. What that means is that each level of government is responsible for a different thing that is in your life. You pay taxes and are a tax-paying citizen. You pay sales taxes, you pay property taxes, you pay a bunch of taxes. So why do you want taxation without representation? You're paying for these individuals in office, you're paying for these programs that a city offers, you're paying for the programs that a county offers. Take advantage of those programs, be critical of them, do all of that. That is our right as US citizens, but get an understanding of what those processes are. Now, under the election code, there are 2 mandatory Saturdays as part of our early voting. There are no excuses for not participating in the process. You can request a ballot by mail. That's mailed to you. That's your home address. If you're away out of town, we will send you a ballot. You have in-person voting, early voting. 3 weeks before every election, we have early voting. Early voting ends the Friday prior to election day, pending no changes out of our legislature. But you have early voting. You also have election day. There are plenty of opportunities to vote. The state of Georgia for the last couple elections has had record turnouts. We average a higher percentage turnout for elections in Douglas County than the state does, but that higher percentage of turnout is anywhere from 62 to 66% turnout. 66%, and for those of you that went through school, that's an abysmal grade. My job is not complete until those numbers go up. I want every person that is legally eligible to cast a ballot to be participating in the processes that you're paying for. The 5th Tuesday, this dictates runoff elections. Currently, you may have heard some legislation that they're proposing eliminated runoffs. As of right now, that piece of eliminated runoffs is a little stalled right now. So we still are on the runoff schedule. Let's go to redistricting. Redistricting. Every 10 years, the state of Georgia is required to take a complete census of the population of the United States. That means every person that lives in the United States. That's not tied to citizenship on purpose, because at one point, individuals that look like me were not considered citizens. That's history. The United States is required because of the Constitution to count every person in the United States. That counting of every person in the United States is important because the distribution of resources for a community, for a state, for a local community is based off of your population size, which is why when you see census workers, it is critically important that you participate for your community to receive all of the resources that it should be receiving based off of your population, for you to participate in processes like the census. Don't run from them. They're not collecting money. Please fill out a census paperwork. We recently in 2020 went through the census, but it's going to come around again. So this is helpful information. Douglas County used to be completely in the 13th congressional district. Douglas County now is in 2 congressional districts. Like I said, it's split between the eastern and the western half of the county into those 2 districts. This was very confusing to a lot of people because they were coming in to vote during the last major election for one individual, but I've always been in the 13th. This happened after redistricting, after 2020 and 2021. Redistricting is the process by which the legislature approves the maps that change a county's district information. Prior to this legislative session, those changes to the maps relied on your local delegation. Your local delegation are your grouping of representatives that represent your area. We have legislation right now in the state of Georgia because the state legislature did something unique with some counties. The full body of the state legislature redraw lines for a county. That was unheard of. That's currently pending in legislation right now. For Douglas County used to be in, these were the House districts that represent Douglas County. You can count the number, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We went from 6 to now 4 represented for the House districts, and we used to be in 2 state Senate districts, and now we're in 3. This 28th state Senate district, this is a new district for us. So some of you all have new representatives that you may not have known now represent you. If you scan that QR code over there, that opens My Voter page. My Voter page is not just where you go to update your account. My Voter page will show all of your district information. It will also let you link to the elected officials that are on the state and federal level that represent you. It will tell you what county districts you're in as well, and your school board and Senate. Each of those different offices, those are state, that's your county, state, federal, those are all different representatives, and those lines do not intersect with each other. The state government, like I said, your congressional delegation is responsible for your state lines, your county lines. The county lines work with work with the Office of Reapportionment. The Office of Reapportionment is a state-based office that works with counties to draw their county lines based off of the county population. The county population for Douglas County has 4 district commissioners and 1 at-large. The chairman is an at-large position. Those 4 for Douglas County, the number I believe is like 36,104 is the number that they were trying to get the county districts to be equal. You have some fluctuations based off of that because you can't get all of it to be completely perfect, because those lines try to use like natural features, river streams and things like that to divide them, so sometimes things get cut up. Now that's your congressional lines. Your school board lines overlay over that as well, and your municipal lines overlay those as well. The municipalities or cities are not bound by this same redistricting phase. They do go through a period of redistricting, but their period of redistricting is when their city council votes to change their lines and sends a copy of their map to the Office of Reapportionment. For the city of Douglasville, we went through this process at the end of last year. The residents of Douglas County that are in the city of Villa Rica, we're going through that process right now with them, because on February 7th, their city council voted to approve their lines and turned in their maps. So these processes do not all happen at the exact same time. One of the questions that our office gets a lot of times from voters is, I just got a precinct card. Why am I getting a new precinct card? Your lines represent based off of your address are different districts. One of those districts may be changing and not all of them at this time. So each time there's any change to your account, you get a new precinct card. You do not have to do anything with that precinct card. It just tells your polling location. And if there has not been a major shift, your polling location may not change, but you will get a new precinct card. Anytime you submit a new voter registration application, you will get a new precinct card. The state recently changed precinct cards because it was very confusing with the precinct cards because it had a tear off fold that says change of address, and people were sending in the change of address for the exact same address. Anything that you submit as far as an application to our office, we have to process that. So you sending in this change of address form because you thought it, because it came with the card, means that we're going to touch your account again, means that you get a new precinct card. You see how this process can continue? We're bound by election code, which dictates everything and every process and procedure that we have to follow. There are some more things that I wanted to go over, and I have slides too, but let's open this up for questions. That's why we're here today. We're going to do this in a fashion. We are recording this session for the citizens of Douglas County. We're also live streaming for Douglas County representatives, so they can't necessarily hear you all at your seat. So what I am going to do, I am going to take a microphone right here, and anyone that has a question, I am going to kindly ask that you step to the microphone so that all of our citizens can hear your question and can hear our responses to your question. Gentleman in the back, you had a question.
Do I need to bring my precinct card to the poll in order to vote?
I think you all heard him clearly. I got a lapel mic too, though, so you may see me use this one or you may see me move it away. But you do not need to bring your precinct card to a precinct to vote. Your precinct card just indicates your unique grouping of representatives, your combo number, which represents your district. So it tells you who represents you and where you are assigned to vote. Let me state this while I'm saying this too. If you wait until election day is whatever date on that ballot that says election day, it will be a Tuesday. Election day is that day. If you wait until election day, you have to go to the unique precinct that you're assigned to. But if you come early vote, you can go to any one of our early voting locations. For county elections and federal elections, we have 7 advanced voting sites. Our 7 advanced voting sites are listed on the paperwork here. They are also on the county's website under polling location. Every year, before every major election, we put out and place on the county's website at celebratedouglascounty.com our elections calendar. That elections calendar will have that complete listing of advanced voting locations. Now, let me throw a monkey wrench in here. This is a municipal election year. During a municipal election year, a municipality is a smaller subset of the population, so we don't have all 7 advanced voting sites. Typically, a municipal election year, we will have the 1 early voting site in that municipality. As of right now, the elections office is still located in the Douglas County Courthouse. So for this election year, our early voting site will be Douglas County's elections office. We have anyone that has voted in the courthouse knows, and please do me a favor and contact your county commissioner, let them know how you feel about voting in the courthouse. Douglas County Courthouse was constructed over 20 years ago, and from my perspective, we need more room. We can house 13 machines in that location. If you voted in a major election, we open 7 advanced voting sites, but the people love to come to our main location. So that's always our busiest location. We are limited by the physical capacity for that room to hold, which is why we make sure that we have additional locations 4 major election years, but this is a shameless plug. We, as the elections office, are going to be coming to our county commissioners looking for additional space. This is not just something that Douglas County Board of Elections is doing. The new election system has a whole host of new components. So every elections office in the state of Georgia is doing this same process with their county legislatures in order to secure additional space. This is also a shameless plug for you to contact your legislatures on the state level. If you have been following the state legislation, the state of Georgia is under the current legislative session. The legislative session for the state of Georgia lasts 40 days. That's not a consecutive 40 days. That's a 40-day period that is established at the start of that legislative session. But during this current legislative session, during crossover day, which is called Sunny Die, where pieces of legislation cross over from one house to the other house, the state house applied funding to update pieces of our election system that need to be updated, include these 67-pound batteries that are called universal power sources. But a member of the state Senate voted in committee in one night to remove all election funding from the state's budget for the 2023 cycle. Let your legislators know how they feel about that. If you value elections, elections need funding. We need funding for facilities. We need funding for poll workers, because we use these terms as volunteer. People are not volunteer. We have to pay poll workers. We may end up having to pay for polling locations if people out of the generous heart continue to pull out from being polling locations. We've had several facilities that have pulled out in Douglas County. At this point, we are not paying facilities, so they're doing this out of the kindness of their heart. But elections are going to happen, and they have to happen somewhere. So we may get to the point where we have to pay locations. Removing all election funding from a state election bills, for me, is a little derelict of duty when the state of Georgia has a $6.6 billion surplus, and to allot none toward the electoral process. That's my spiel. I don't even know where we are with the question.
Director Kidd, how much does it cost to put on these elections? And is it true that the state of Georgia will no longer accept grant funds in order for you all to offset some of the costs from the taxpayers in order to put on these elections?
Elections cost a lot. We now are in a state that is applying more and more mandates to elections offices. You see Senate Bill 202 added days to the electoral process. I'm fine with those days, but those days mean that there have to be bodies that work those polling locations. Those days mean that you have to transport that equipment to sites. Those days mean that as our population size grows, you have to purchase new equipment. Nothing lasts forever. You're going to be adding pieces to this in order to function. Elections cost a lot of money. Anytime you have anything that is government related, people feel that they can charge you more. And we are mandated by law, by the equipment that we use, by the processes and procedures that we use. You can't go to Joe Smo and tell them I need a ballot marking device. You have to go through a vendor that the state of Georgia has approved and has a contract with in order to purchase elections equipment. These are called ballot marking devices. You can think of this as a glorified pen. For those of you that voted prior to 2020, you're used to what are called DREs, or direct record electronic units. Those actually recorded votes. These do not record a vote. You can think of this as an electronic pen. It stops you from doing what is called an undervote or overvote. Undervote is if you don't select a candidate for a race that you should be voting for. Overvote is you try to select more than one candidate. Essentially, this stops you from doing that. It prints it out in a legible format. anyone that has worked with the elections office knows and understands that sometimes individuals with a pen and paper with ballots do some creative things with marking up those ballots. When a ballot, I'm gonna tie all of this back together too. I know I'm going to different areas. When a ballot is marked by hand and is illegible, it has to go to a vote review panel. A vote review panel consists of individuals of both political parties that try to interpret the will of the voter. To stop that, when voters vote in person, we have ballot marking devices. Ballot marking devices allow you to make your selection and print your ballot. That ballot is not counted until it goes into the scanner. I said all that to say that these are the state picked up our initial allocation based off of our initial population size. The state of Georgia and the state election board worked together in conjunction to select a vendor. The state of Georgia selected Dominion Voting Solutions. Prior to Dominion Voting Solutions, we had what is called ES&S, Election Systems and Software. A county government has no control over which components are used in the process. But I will state, and I'm going to go into this a little later, I do think that we should have electronic components to our electoral process. I'll break down the numbers of that in a minute. But yes.
So, during the time that they were debating Senate Bill 202, what I kept saying, what I said on my speech in the floor, if you go pull my speech in the floor, is that we needed a physical note. We did not have a physical note. What that means is that everything, every component of that system, the battery, the paper that goes in there, all of that is on the onus of the county. I need that going in, which is why I did not support that bill. So that's what's going on right now. Whatever the county needs, they're gonna have to pay for it. There is no physical note with 202, so all of the things that are going on with the elections is now the responsibility of the county.
And the counties receive, yes, and the counties receive no funding from a state with a surplus of funds. But not just receive any money too. What 202 did, and what people don't understand, for the 2020 election, I gave you a couple numbers early. We processed 20,000 absentee ballots, but we also processed a record number of individuals inside of polling locations. For a presidential election year, we vote about 70 some odd thousand people over that 3-week period plus election day. 202, Douglas County was able to secure grant funding. That grant funding went toward paying poll workers to come out and be poll workers, because if any of you that were around during 2020, you know that we were in the middle of a pandemic. We're still technically in a pandemic. We just, as a country, have chosen to forget about it. But that grant funding allowed us to be able to attract poll workers because we were able to pay them a decent wage. The code section states that an individual working at a polling location should be paid at least $90. For most elections, an election is 14 to 16 hours. How many of you in this room are going to work for $90 for 14 to 16 hours? None. So that means that you have to pay poll workers. Part of the funding that we were able to secure through grant funds, we did not have to pick up that cost as a county. This allowed us to supplement our electoral process without having to burden the taxpayers. You did not have to go back to you all and say, we need this money for elections. We need this money for ink cartridges. Each of these printers that we have to use takes an ink cartridge. The ink cartridge for the printer is $125. The ballot marking devices, if you need any extra them, they're $25,000 to $3,000. The scanner is the top piece. The top piece of that scanner is $3,000. Yes.
paper that I have was 25 cents per paper.
It's-
I don't know how much.
It's now, it's 13 cents a paper for the one that are used in this. You get to mail ballots, you right now with printing and the ink on there, you're at 55 to 60 cents for a physical paper ballot. People that want paper in the electoral process don't understand what paper means. Paper means additional cost. We should be relying on more digital technology. Paper is one of the least efficient methods in voting. And I'll break that down a little while too. But each piece of paper, you have to have a security paper with security features that has a cost to it. The cost of elections is great. And like Representative Alexander, like Commissioner Carton said, the counties now, because of the infinite wisdom of the state legislature, are responsible for picking up those costs. We used to have ways in which we could subsidize that cost. It was not, and you hear this idea of liberal groups, they say, funding elections. That's not the case. Douglas County got money from the Arnold Schwarzenegger Institute of Technology. We got money from the Center for Tech and Civic Life. The Center for Tech and Civic Life is an independent organization that wanted to help county governments not have to burden their citizens. Yes, they did have a donor base of billionaires that gave money to this organization to give out, but the organization itself is not a political organization. They tied no piece of the funding to the county with any stipulation. Every other county agency, every police department, every the teachers, every firefighters, ones that directly have enforcement of your life, get grant funds. The state legislature has decided that only elections cannot get funding. So much so that under the current bill, they're also trying to preclude a legal form of government. A county government is a legal form of government from securing additional funding to give to county offices to not have to go to their tax base to raise taxes. Yeah. Hold the button. You see the light?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question is, can you explain the rule on running for office in a district if you have moved out of that district?
Yes, I can. 21-2-117. The district information is not moved out of a district information. Your actual question that you're asking is this: how do you determine residency? 21-2-117, determine the residency of a person desiring to register to vote or to qualify or run for elected office. The following rules shall apply. Anytime the legislature puts shall in that, that means you shall do it. That means it is not your interpretation. It is not anything that you can do. You shall do this. The residency of a person shall be held in the place in which such person's habitat is fixed without any present intention of removing thereof. A person shall not be considered to have lost such person's residency who leaves such person home or goes into another state or county or municipality in the state for temporary purposes only, with the intention of returning unless such person shall register to vote or perform other acts indicating their desire to change a person's citizenship and residency. A person shall not be considered to have gained a residency in any county or municipality in which such person has come for temporary purposes only, without the intention of making such county or municipality such person's permanent place or of abode. If a person removes to another state with the intention of making such person's residency, such person shall be considered to have lost such person's residency in that state. I'm going to skip down. This is, once again, the book is OCGA, Georgia Annotated Election Code. The code section that I'm reading is 21-2-217. The page that I'm on is on page 180. This continues to 181. This particular section has 15 passages by which you which you shall go by. I'm gonna come down to 15. 15 says, for the purpose of registration, the Board of Registers, and as far as candidacy residency purpose, the Secretary of State, election superintendent, or hearing officer may consider evidence for where a person receives significant mail, such as personal bills and other evidence that indicates where a person resides. There are a couple different things. You can't tell a person where they intend to live. The code section says where they tell you they live, you have to take that. It also says, and it gives you specific documentation to which they can provide for establishing residency. That's a registration card, that's their homestead exemption, that's where their driver's license is, that's where they receive significant mail. Significant mail is a utility bill, any bill that is issued by a court agency. There are rules by which we shall go by for determining residency. For the specific case that you are referring to with a county commissioner, that is the code section that the Board of Elections had to go by.
Two questions. One,
Yes.
and you may have said this and I didn't hear it. When the commissioner asked about the cost of elections, I don't know if you summarized that or not.
Summarize, okay.
And then I had another question after that.
Okay, a good thing. I'll use the municipal election. The municipal election coming up, we presented a municipal cost to the city of Douglasville of $64,000 for this municipal election. The municipality does not actually, they are legally responsible for 100% of the cost, but it's hard to actually subdivide the costs between municipalities because the work that you're doing for one municipality, you're doing it at the exact same time. So we have what is called an intergovernmental agreement with them that gives specific percentages by which we can charge them. But realistically speaking, that $64,000, if you added everything for a municipal election for just Douglasville, which is 26,000 people, you're looking at $100,000 to $150,000 for an election with 26,000 people. Multiply that by Douglas County's population of 140,000 for election purposes, 106,000, you have a number. The 100 to 150,000 is based off of 26,000 people.
And
if those funds are no longer available for, those funds were used in 2020 because you were able to get that fund. If I recall, there were 3 audits, something to that effect.
Yes. Those funds are not just 2020. Those funds that we received in 2020 were utilized in the 2020 election, the 2021 runoff election. That was the largest runoff election. For the 2021 runoff election, it was almost a complete turnaround as far as number-wise. The same number of people that voted almost in the general turned around and re-voted again. We received $548,000 to apply. Those funds went directly toward recruitment of poll workers for the runoff election. That 500,000 number, that's poll workers for a complete countywide election. That is 500,000 for poll workers for one election that did not come out of the county coffers. Now, for every election of that sort, those funds are going to come out of county expenses. for every election office and every election director had the ability to go out and seek funds so that they did not have to raise the tax burden on their county constituents. It is my opinion that it is the job of the elections director to try to lessen the burden as possible on the constituents. Utilizing of grant funds is one of the means by which we could have lessened that tax burden on the voters of our districts that we have sworn an oath to officiate in the most efficient and effective manner. But now we're being blocked from doing that. And we're the only office that is being blocked from doing that. No other county office, no other state office is being blocked from securing additional funds or securing funds that are not directly allocated from the tax base other than elections. And there's no legitimate reason for that. Including the SOS, yeah, gets grant funds all at the same time, blocking county offices from getting grant funds.
Something similar happened in 2023 or 2024, really, then we, at this point, the county will have some challenges in terms of being able to staff those elections and
Yes.
especially if you have an audit like you did, it's going to be pretty difficult for you.
Yes, and speaking of audits, there's now a bill that has made it through both pieces of the legislature. It hasn't been signed yet, it's still waiting, that will require audits after every election. What she was referring to as audits is during the 2020 election season, the machines, we scan those into the machines, but in order to verify that count, we conduct a post-election audit. That post-election audit is you taking those physical ballots themselves, reading the text of that physical ballot, and getting those numbers. When you do that, for 2020, the state of Georgia conducted the largest hand recount ever. That hand recount, the price note, the physical note of that to count one race, it's about 15 cents per race. So you saw the ballot that we put up here, that was 21 races. So 15 cents, that's the physical note that's attached to that. 15 cents to hand count each of those attached to every question. That was one ballot. So that's roughly $3 and some cents to count. So take that 315, and we had 70,000 ballots counted in that election. So 315 times 70,000 ballots. That's 220,500 to hand count those ballots. That would be, if we went to a complete system of complete hand count, that 220,000 number would be for every election. In a presidential election year, you can have up to 5 elections. So multiply that 220,000 times 5 elections is what you're looking at with a hand count of all of the races on a standard ballot for the state.
I just wanted. How this works. I can just stop. Okay. I just wanted to make clear, are you saying that the state is not going to fund elections just this year, or is that next year? Or I want to make clear, is that just for this year when we're not having a major election?
They cannot get grant funding. There was no physical note attached to it, which means that the county is having to pay for everything.
But does the state still has to pay, right?
Anything.
So the state's not going to pay for anything from now on,
Yes.
ever?
Unless a new law is passed.
There is nothing produced that over and over again. It's going to be on the responsibility of the county, all 159 counties.
So the state just took it out of the budget
Yes.
forever. Huh.
Because I know when they got these machines, they gave a lot of money to the counties and
They gave a lot of money to the county when they.
for,
got
to
these
buy the
machines.
machines.
Well,
for the
no,
machines?
no, no, let me offer.
Okay,
The way the machines, the counties didn't receive any money to buy the machines. The state did a state contract, a state RFP to purchase the machines. They allocated the machines once they purchased the machines to the counties based off of your current size at that particular time. They gave you a portion of your size of your county. It was not to completely cover all of your voters. The state since then has subsequently added rules to our elections process, including the 1 per 250 voters. So for a population size, for every 250 voters, you have to, in a precinct, have to have a ballot marking device. That ballot marking device is the device itself, it's the printer, it's the UPS, the universal power source, and it also encompasses the scanner. So they did the initial purchase of some of our equipment. That was it. They gave us no direct funding.
so in the
Or
past,
maintenance. Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
past years, about how much has the state given the counties for elections? Well, is there like a an amount they give
It's
in
not
the
a,
past?
it's not a specific.
You gotta understand, so prior to that, they had another bill which they changed the system. I had about 5 bills that I wrote. 4 of my bills were taken and put into that. This is when they got the first new equipment. So keep in mind,
So I'm not
316.
talking about the equipment now. You're saying that the state's not going to give the counties money for elections anymore. So I want to know, how much did the state give before all this?
Right.
How much did the
Okay.
states?
It-
state
there,
give the
there's
county?
no there was no defined amount prior to that for specific things. When you had large elections, the state would allocate funding that election. It was not a standing amount. Like when we had heavy years, they would allocate funding to you, but it was not a specific amount.
So really, it really hasn't changed that much if we really didn't have a set amount that we got every year
It-
from the state for elections. The counties have pretty much been doing it all along.
The counties have been doing it all along, but the
Mhm.
counties also had other mechanisms. 2020 was not the first year that counties got grant funding. It was publicized in 2020, but we were always eligible to get assistance from external organizations. People were able to donate things. People were able to make in-kind donations to elections offices.
So really what you're saying, the only thing that's really changed is you don't, no longer get grant money. It's pretty much what you're saying.
We no longer get grant money.
Mhm.
They added additional requirements. You added additional days. You added additional equipment. Each of this equipment comes with, we didn't purchase the equipment, but there's a licensing agreement for each of this equipment. Dominion is the state-based system that the state chose for the equipment. To maintain the equipment, if the Douglas County decided to go with the maintenance equipment, the maintenance package on this equipment, that's an additional 70,000 each year.
So really the state, since they bought the equipment, they should do the maintenance on it.
they're not doing the maintenance. Now, you gotta understand that when Senate Bill 202 came out, there were certain things that they're supposed to do also, like making sure that they have 24-hour view of the box. So the counties are responsible for that. That security of the box, they're responsible for paying for that. So it's not just the fact that they having these new systems, they're having the paper, they don't have the grant funding. When you read through the bill, there are certain things that are required, that the state is requiring election officers to do, and they're having to pay for that. So that's the reason why it is so important to have people, and there were people that were there and they were complaining too. The biggest concern that I had, that I raised over and over again, is that this should not be the responsibility of the counties. Voting in elections should not be the responsibilities of the counties. So now the counties are having to pay for all of this based on Senate Bill 202.
And with the passage of that bill, prior to 202, we did not have a paper-based system. So you did not have the 90,000 in paper costs. You didn't have the 120,000 for ink. You didn't have the, I have to pay people to transport batteries, and they have broken trucks trying to carry these heavy batteries. So it is different fees and different things that have been associated with the equipment. It's the maintenance of the equipment. It's purchasing additional equipment, because as your county grows, this is the only system that you can use. So you're going to have to purchase more BMDs. You're going to have to purchase more printers. You're going to have to purchase more batteries. You're going to have to purchase more pieces of this equipment. And each of those pieces has an initial purchase price. It has an initial maintenance price. It has yearly upkeep and all of the features that are associated with it. We didn't have that before. The old system was a self-contained unit that the most we paid was for thermal paper. So that's why election costs since 2020 have tripled, and election budgets have had to triple since 2020. They should. Yes.
So anytime there is legislation that comes up, what you will see, there are advocates all over the state of Georgia. When I went to present my simple bill for a study committee, there are audience of people that are there advocating on behalf of the communities, and some of them are there anytime there's an election bill come up. But I will say that even when Senate Bill 202 came up, it was always packed in the room. Since I sat there on the board, one of the things I kept saying over and over again is we got 159 counties. Who's going to pay for this? Who's going to pay for the paper that costs 25 cents? Who's going to pay for all this maintenance? There was no physical note attached to the bill. So if you don't have a physical note attached to the bill, it's going to be the responsibility of the counties. And so that's where we are now, is that, unless we come back and we do another legislation or another draft, another law saying that there's going to be a physical note attached to it, or unless more money go into the budget, which I can tell you, we just finished the budget and it did not. So we are where we are.
Myself and some other election directors,
They were there.
they're there, and we are, like this town hall. This town hall is the state legislature needs to hear from more than just elections directors. That we keep throwing we keep throwing it out there for the general public to participate in the process, but they have to hear from their constituents as well. The counties are advocating for this additional funding for you to pick up these pieces so that it does not become burdensome to our local communities, but they have to hear from our communities as well. But there are elections directors. Every election director worth his salt should be having meetings like this, informing their population of what is going on. I can't speak for any other office but Douglas County continues to advocate for our voters, because I understand what this burden means for our voters.
Okay, I just want to say one more thing. I don't think grants is the way to go. I think the state should take responsibility for the elections, not, taking over for the counties. I don't want them to take over elections. I think they should finance more of the elections.
We're in
The thing
agreement
with the
that.
grants is not all the counties got grants. I mean, that's not fair. If you're not going to give grants to every single county, for this,
We're in
to
agreement
make
with.
it fair.
We're in agreement with that. I
Mhm.
think that a state should put his money where his mouth is.
Right.
If you say that you value elections, I
Mhm.
think the state
I agree with
should
that.
be funding elections. But
Mhm.
when they did not fund elections, then where do you do? Do you not have elections? Because you can't not have elections, it's going to happen. Then it's on the individual offices to try to find ways. For Douglas County, we found ways. Every elections office could have applied for grant funding.
Plus, it puts a burden on counties that don't have very much money.
Yes,
So
we're in
it's,
agreement.
it's really not fair. So the state really needs to,
Brought up also too, that even if it was not a county the size of Douglas, those little small counties, that they're still having to pay. So all of that was brought up at the time when we had the meeting.
Madam Carthen, I see your hand.
give us stuff. They have stopped that. So it is basically, you can't do anything but go in and go to the street.
Yes.
We got
Yeah. Yeah, when we were, yeah.
But that you may not get the crowd of runs that is.
Outside, down the block.
Yeah, I kept saying over and over again, it wasn't just the water issue. The bill was much more than that, much more than that. If you're standing in line and you've been standing there for a long time and you think you're in the right precinct, they were giving out provisional ballots. They do not do that any longer, only on election day. if
Only
I'm correct.
after 5.
After 5. So it's just a lot that changed with that. And it's so important that when we have this legislation come out, I say it all the time, it's so important that people read that legislation. And I try to have as many town halls as I could to make sure I was letting people know about that. But now that it's like anything, that once you have legislation, there's repercussion. And this is a repercussion of us having Senate Bill 202 is now it's the responsibility of the counties.
Yeah. So once again, everybody could have applied for a grant fund. The grant fund is a Band-Aid. I want the legislature to adequately fund elections. That is the ultimate goal, is to get our legislature to fund elections. The legislature put into the code that you can only receive funding from a legally appropriated source. Be the legally appropriated source. But they have to hear from you all, because ultimately the burden is going to fall onto local communities. And if they don't hear from local communities, then you think that everything is fine.
So that bill 202, the final decision was made by that the state is no longer going to fund the county. Is that by the governor's decision, the president's,
It's a bill that passed out of the House, passed out of the Senate.
Okay,
That happened on the crossover day, and then the governor signed the bill.
okay.
It is 52, it's 52 sections. It is an extremely large bill. It is a lot of information.
Yeah. I believe it's 93 pages. Yeah, 52 sections. Yeah. But that was not the end. Like Representative Carthen just said, the piece that's blocking county governments, this is new legislation. They went back because county governments, once you blocked elections offices from securing additional funds, the 202 said that a legal governing authority, a county government is the legal governing authority over elections offices. They now have blocked the county government from securing funds just for elections. No other county department is blocked. The rationale behind it is undue influence. My analogy of that is the police force. The police force is able to take an individual's life, but they can apply for grant funds from anyone. You don't find an undue burden on them from getting grant funds, but you find an undue burden on elections offices. The elections offices are still bound by the laws as what an elections office can do. When you got funds, you had to appropriate those in a specific manner and can only use them in specific areas and had to track how you were using those. So there is not this undue pressure that was alluded to. And nobody has been able to show that with you blocking that. And that's all fine and well. If you're going to block us from securing additional funds, allocate funds for elections.
Last question. Where there were some additions or edits to the SB two. I think it was, what was it, SB 20 or something?
221.
But I don't think it went through. Is that correct?
Are you talking about when they were debating that too, the bill? Because the bill changed about 10 times. It changed about 10 times, literally in front of my eyes. While we were sitting there, it changed. When I come back the next day, it changed. So it changed constantly. So you may have saw some things that got added on, as we indicated before, but the final bill had 52 sections, almost close to 100 pages.
This has been changed this year?
No,
No.
that was during that time. The bill that we have, there's another bill out there now, is Senate Bill 222. So that bill is now on it's sitting on like a list of bills that can come up at any time to go to the rules calendar.
So it's still alive. It hasn't
it's still
progressed
alive.
right now. The legislative session is still going on. There is an election bill right now. It has not passed yet, but the legislative session is still going on. Like Representative Alexander was stating, sometimes when you feel like you can't get a complete bill through, you can add those pieces to a bill that has nothing to do with what the original language of the bill is doing. So until they hit that final gavel,
On
there can
Wednesday.
still be election legislation that's passed.
Correct. So that was another bill. That's another bill. This bill is Senate Bill 222. It is pretty much defining what the local governments can and cannot do.
Mhm.
So that's what that bill is. It's a lot of pages in that bill also too. So I just have some talking points, not a lot, because I didn't really want to go in a whole lot of detail because right now the bill, it's not moving. It may move on Wednesday. So if it does, then of course myself,
Yes, we would
local-
do.
we can come back and just educate people on it. But if you're,
Where do we find that? You know,
so,
where do you
so
find
you
that
can
information
find
so
it
we
on
can
the
look at it?
website. If you go to www.legis, just go to the Georgia General Assembly. You put in Senate Bill 222 and that bill will come up. There's probably a modified version, so you want to make sure you get the most current version of it because it changes too. Now, keep in mind, you may be seeing what you see on the actual website, but on Wednesday, as we indicated, that bill can change. That it can be attached to another bill. It could be 4 different bills. It can be a number of bills. So you just have to pay attention to it because it can change. But you can pull it up.
Thank you.
And that website that Representative Alexander was referencing to link to the Georgia General Assembly, we will put a link on the county's election website too. The General Assembly, you can go on there, it'll ask you to enter the election year and you can tell it that you want to pull up all current legislation that's being proposed. You can separate it by House and Senate. You can separate it and see at what level of passage it is. Like it'll say first read, second read, pass. But we'll put that link on our website as well under celebratedouglascounty.com under our elections tab. Are there any more questions at this time? This is not the last of this. This is only the first of these town halls. As we continue to have updates to election legislation, we will have more of these. We will have question and answer sessions. You all are more than welcome to always submit any questions to the elections office at Board of Elections, at BD of Elections at douglascounty.com. We do respond to individuals. We do come out to community events. There is a place on our website that you can request to have members of the Board of Elections speak to you as well, or speak to your organizations. We are committed to making sure that individuals understand our elections process. We had some more things planned, but it's getting late in the hour. We had an 8 o'clock time frame, but this is not the last of these. This is only one of the first of these public engagement forums. If there are no more questions, I thank you all for your time and attention on this. What day is this? Wednesday night.